Greetings, ladies and laddies, and welcome back to another episode of Brink of Arts Miniature Painting. Today, we will paint a pair of uniquely kitbashed Eldar Farseers I got from eBay. The minis are very nicely done and a welcome change to the usual Eldar roster, long since neglected by Games Workshop. For an easier distinction, I'll differentiate the two by calling them Swordseer and Styxia. I did wonder where the bits came from though. The legs, torso and capes are obviously bits from the old Warhammer Fantasy High Elven Phoenix Guard, or in case of the Farseer with the Staff of Lilith, are hand-sculpted imitations of those bits. This model also features long hand-sculpted sleeves and a lot of bits from the 40k Eldar Urain model. All in all, really exciting and very nicely kitbashed models, leaving their Games Workshop counterparts far behind in terms of design. Speaking of design, because we are working with truly unique models today, I really wanted to make sure to do them justice and not mess them up with an uncarefully chosen color scheme. Lore-wise, I want them to be clearly distinguishable as Yennari, so I needed red as my base of operations. I didn't want to use the very vibrant red from Games Workshop though, but rather went for a darker Bordeaux red, better suiting the grimdark style of the 40k universe in my opinion. Probably biased by the Soul Drinkers from earlier, I tried out purple and blue first. After that, I tried out a lot of other color schemes, most notably a style closer to the craft world Beal Tan, and many more. In the end, I went for a slightly modified version of the first scheme. By the way, I actually kept working on this sketch, and if you'd like to see the complete version, you might want to have a look on my Instagram account. Okay, having the mockup done, I wanted to prime the models white, but since I live in Germany, where the April weather never stops to fool us, going outside was a bit difficult at that moment. While we're waiting for the snowstorm to pass, let me just quickly introduce some new gear I got for the channel. Apart from a sweet electric turntable, I also ordered 2 painting handles. After waiting 4 months for them to arrive, because the Brits thought it would be a bright idea to skedaddle out of Europe, they are finally ready for duty. I've never used anything like these before, and I'm really curious about if they will improve my performance. Let's put them directly to the test while we're getting rid of the rock on the Swordseer's base, taking up more space than the beautiful model itself. Nope, the model doesn't sit there tightly enough and I need to hold it myself. Oh well, the handle will have plenty of opportunities to prove itself. Okay, the storm has finally passed, so let's just quickly give the minis a white priming. The spray prime isn't perfect, but on the other hand it didn't clog up the finely casted details like the flames engraved in their capes as I feared. For a smooth base to work with, I took Caramid White and painted the many spots missed by the spray primer. If you want to follow these steps with your own models, make sure your glove tangles itself around the very delicate bits and snaps them off in a split second. Luckily, I was able to glue it back on, and from here we just have to hope the paint covers it up nicely. Starting with the armor of the Farseers, I gave their scale mail a base coat with lead belcher. After that, I used Nuln Oil to bring all of the scales back to show, especially on the hand-sculpted bits. Talking about bringing the scales back to show, I used my fine detail brush and a bit of Ironbreaker to carefully pick out every single scale on the Styxia scale mail each, to really make the effect pop and emphasize the origin of the armor. This was very tedious, not gonna lie. The Swordseer scales got a similar treatment, but this time I was only painting the strongly lit scales, aiming for a subtle true metallic lighting effect. Alright, let's turn our attention to the plate armor. I used multiple coats of Wordbearer's Red for the base coat. Usually I would finish the armor now with wash and edge highlights, but I'll hold off on that for now, as I want to use Karabog Crimson for the red armor, as well as for the purple robes. Speaking about the robes, I took Xerius purple, Xerox purple as I like to call it, and started to give them a smooth and intensely dark base coat. Painting over white is actually quite a pain, as you need multiple coats to really achieve a smooth color, and every spot you miss, especially the deep, hard to reach spots, will remain white, which can really mess up the overall look of the mini if one's not careful. Back to the capes, I'll now try something very bold and paint the lower parts of the capes where the flames are carved in with Macragge blue. I don't want it to be very opaque, so we can get away with having it thinned slightly too much with water. For a smooth transition, I wet blended the blue and purple into one another, which took some time, but left me with a seamless transition. The last thing I want to do before applying the wash is giving the folds of the robes and capes highlights with Genestealer purple. Trying to achieve the smoothest effect possible, I put some Xerox purple down first, and then very carefully blended the Genestealer purple in. The finest folds, like the ones on the Styxia's shoulders, just got highlighted by directly applying Genestealer purple. No edge highlighting for the armor just yet, because Corn Red is too subtle and would just be overpowered by the wash, and Mephiston Red is too bright and outshines Carabao Crimson by too much. Having the cloaks fully edge highlighted, we can finally move on to the wash stage. As planned, both the capes and the armor get a heavy wash with Carabao Crimson. Here you can see the difference the wash makes, and apart from the armor being a lot darker, I really like the red tint in the purple of the capes. Really a shame we couldn't preserve that in the Souljinkers armor from last time. Good, just finishing the wash on the Styxia before getting out Corn Red for edge highlighting the armor. The effect is really subtle and it seems like the color isn't as opaque as I'd thought it'd be. But hey, on the other hand, imagine how it looked like if we would have done the wash not before but afterwards. Hey, editing Jan here. Watching this clip, I think I could have just also not done the tedious edge highlighting, as it apparently doesn't make much of a difference anyway. Huh. You might notice some bright red on the upper part of his chest plate, and that's because I did try Mephiston Red for the highlights, but then disregarded it. The color was indeed too bright for the overall mini, and I feared it could be annoying to look at. Okay, moving on, I took care of the inside of the capes with Kislev Flesh. Getting into all the deep parts of the capes that were hidden behind the armor was tricky, but nothing impossible. Now we can take care of the last parts of their clothing. I painted the Swordseer's underrobe in various white colors, using Ulthuan Grey as the base coat, then Apothecary White as a subtle wash, and finished it up by using White Scar for the highlights. As we planned in the overhauled mockup, the Styxia's underrobe gets a light blue paint job, using Lothern Blue as the base coat, Talosar Blue for bringing some shadows into the folds, and then Lothern Blue again for the highlights. For the leather, gloves and belts, I like to try out the new Gorfang Brown I found in one of my friends' dropped Warhammer collections, and after that, wash it with Reikland Flesh Shade instead of a Grux Earth Shade, for I don't want to darken the brown too much, but rather give it a slightly red tint to tie it together with the rest of the model. Leaving the wash plenty of time to dry, I took Steel Legion Drab for the highlights. I was pondering for quite a long time about what color to use for the trinkets, etc., the options being silver and gold, but in the end I went with silver for the majority of them, as I thought the yellow shine of the true metallic gold could be a bit irritating to look at. I still used it, but only very sparingly. Before moving on to the gems, I painted the big pendants on the Swordseer's crotch and the cane of the Styxia with sandy dust, as I considered them to be made out of rave bone. To finish them off, I gave them a few highlights with Ushapti Bone and a quick wash with Seraphim Zapier. The gemstones surely serve some magical purpose, and as such I wanted them to glow from the inside. I laid down the foundation with Macragge Blue and Caledor Sky, painted Lothern Blue and Nirlok Oxide more towards the gem's center, and then finished it off with a fine streak of Ulthuan Grey in the middle. And done! Now we just need to repeat these steps 25 times more. I think the gemstones look great, and they are surely one of my favorite things about these minis. Next, I moved on to the helmets. The Swordseer's helmet got a reinforced base coat with Ulthuan Grey and a quick wash with Apothecary White. After painting the front with Skaven Light Dinge, I painted the lenses in a similar fashion as the gemstones, getting increasingly brighter as I moved to the center of the face and finishing it up with a small white dot in their darkest parts. A very effective method for achieving some quite realistic looking eye lenses. The Styxia's helmet was a lot easier to paint as I went for a pitch black visor and painted the tuft of hair by simply slopping on some Telesur blue contrast, which proved to be a great shortcut for a change. For the Swordseer's energy sword, I took great inspiration from the amazing miniature painter Juan Sanz, whose Instagram I had linked in the description below. I used the same blue tones as before, getting increasingly brighter as I moved to the hilt of the sword, not the tip. Then painted the hilt and filled in the runes with pure white scar. I finished it off with some Lothern Blue edge highlighting and was left with a really cool flaming energy sword. Speaking of flames, I filled in the flames on the underside of the capes with Lothern Blue and then painted Nirlok Oxide further down to prepare them for the next step. Some extra free-handed flames using Ulthuan Grey. I toyed with the idea of painting the flames in a bright green, but I didn't want to ruin the project in the last hours, so I stayed with white. Almost at the finishing line, I took care of some last big and small details, and, as a first on the channel, actually took care of the bases, finishing them up with smooth black trims, and even throwing in a bush, for good measure. The minis are done, and so am I. But in contrast to me, the Farseers look great. I'm really happy with how they turned out, and really enjoyed trying out all of my different ideas with great success. The color combination works out just fine, and even though the models feature a lot of eye-catching effects, nothing distracts from the model as a whole. I hope you guys enjoyed following me along on this project, and maybe even recommend it to a friend who might enjoy it too. And if you didn't, please feel free to recommend it to your foes. The next eBay rescue is going to be this behemoth of a model, too big to fit it into a single shot. An old Warhammer fantasy high elf prince riding a mighty dragon who could really use someone to patch him up. If you want to catch his transformation as well as my other big secret project, feel free to hit the subscribe button, for there are always a lot of minis out there that could use some more love and care, and I am looking forward to seeing you again in my next video. Until then, take care. I painted the Swordseer's underrobe in various white colors using warum kann ich und getting increasingly brighter as I moved to the center of the face and finishing it up with a smite. I finished it up with a smite. Whoopsie.